Hey everybody, welcome to Surface Level, curious conversations about the Black and queer experience. I'm one of your hosts, Jordan, and today, Damon, Tony, and I are asking our parents the questions we always wanted answered. How have our parents' earliest experiences with queer culture impacted their beliefs of queerness? What were our parents' journey of coming to terms with our sexuality? This is Parents Just Don't Understand, Part 2. All right. Welcome into the studio.
Yes, welcome. Who knows how this is gonna go?
Exactly.
Listen, we might be on punishment after this. Well, grounded.
Specifically from a lot of these conversations, but so our theme for this season of Surface Level is Earth, Wind, and Fire. And this episode is the last episode of our Earth segment. So it's all about like our grounding forces. And that's why our parents are here, because you all ground us. And so we're really excited to have these conversations with you today. But before we get into the conversations, we want to play a game. And we do this with all of our guests. So I'm going to explain the game. Here you go. Please give your parents the paddles. So we are going to play a game called That's My Baby. Okay? And the game works like this. I'm going to read a scenario, and then based on what I read off to you, you're going to vote whether that's your baby or that's not your baby. Okay? And so you have a green paddle and a red paddle. All right? Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, keep it that way.
But make sure you show the paddle to the camera.
Oh.
Okay. So the first quote is from a previous podcast episode. So let us know if this was your baby or not your baby. I'm very good at holding people accountable, but not so much at giving people grace.
You have to vote, Mom.
You have to vote too. So you think it was me, or do you not think it was me?
Very good at holding people accountable, but not very good at giving people grace.
Right.
Who's not good at giving people grace? Which of us is it?
What's your vote? Not your baby.
I'll go with this.
I'm just gonna go like everybody else.
Why you? You're not everybody else's mama.
Annette, you were right the first time.
You was right. Yes. Go with your gut.
That's your baby.
That's your baby.
All right. We're warming up. So the next one. Am I allowed to use profanity?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, you had asked. Told you you're gonna be grounded.
This was a quote from a previous podcast episode. Yes, you have the right to say what you want to say, but you also have the right to get your ass beat. Oh, you think that was me? Oh, you think?
Oh.
You had a
I
vote.
don't think that's not my baby.
Oh, wow.
Wait a minute. I was thinking this one. I'm sorry. I hit the wrong one.
You gotta face it that way.
Oh.
So that was Tony.
That was you? Oh my God.
That was me, but
That
not
was Tony.
in real life. I don't fight in real life, but
Right.
I roll with goons just in case people get familiar. I think I probably said that because
That's interesting.
I got I'm friends with Damon, and so Damon's the
been
fighter
rubbing
of the
off on
group. He's the fighter of the group, so I don't know what we were talking about, but I
Don't blame
think
me. You said that.
you said that. Well, who said that?
You said that, Tony.
That's interesting.
I'm gonna have to pay attention to these because
One's green and one's red,
Okay.
All right, the next one. A little bit risque. Which host admitted on a previous podcast episode that they enjoyed being slapped and choked? Consensually, of course.
Oh. You got to vote.
Tony Major?
Yeah, maybe that was you, Tony.
Oh, okay.
It's probably you.
Well, Mom, that was me.
You was right.
I knew it was you.
All right. Whew, I'm shaking right now. I didn't know I was going to have this type of conversation
I
with
was
you.
about to leave.
You learn something new every day.
Every
Okay.
day.
A little bit lighter. Okay. Which of us has been deemed as the social butterfly of the group?
Oh.
Okay.
Me?
Oh, wow. So all the parents think that their child is a social butterfly. Well, the correct answer is Tony Minor.
Yeah, of course, that's you.
You know
Tony
I like all
Minor.
these people. What are you talking about?
You seem like social to me. I always say
Me and Damon like to be
Alone.
alone.
Miss Annette, and Miss Teresa said, "Listen, y'all know more people than I do. Therefore,
Exactly.
that you
Right.
seem
That's
social
right.
to me."
You're always saying you need to be more social. You need to be
Oh,
I figure
okay.
you social.
Good train of thought.
All right. So, which host was voted as most likely to quit their corporate job and to join the adult entertainment industry?
Wow.
Okay, you're saying not my baby mom. Miss Annette is saying not Damon.
Join the adult industry.
And the adult
That might have been you
entertainment-
too, Tony.
Listen, he's giving it all to you, Tony. The correct answer is Damon.
If I quit my job every time I talk to you, anything has got to be more fun than corporate America.
Well, listen, they are very lucrative. So, if Damon bring home a certain bag, I think you might change your mind.
Okay. So this is a quote from a previous podcast episode. Who said it? I can put on those booty shorts. I could wear a crop top. I'd wear a skirt. Who said that? Okay.
I think that was you, Devon. But you might have been said that too, though.
I do everything, right?
Right.
I'm listening. Now I'm the doggone villain.
That was Tony.
Well,
You're
listen.
adventurous.
If the skirt fits, if the crop top fits, wear it.
All right. And the last question.
Okay.
Which host on a previous podcast episode said, and this got profanity in it, Mom, I'm not having no fucking kids. Who said that?
I think
Not
that
my
was
baby.
you. I think that was you.
Who, me? You think I'm everything. I am everything,
I think it's
actually.
you because
I
you're
am
always
everything.
saying I'm not having kids.
Exactly.
Missing that. Your intuition was right. That was Devon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, give
Okay.
yourself a round of applause. Y'all made it to the game. Y'all made it to the game. Okay.
So I gave you all green.
Well, listen, I'm capable of anything. I'm capable of anything.
All right. And another thing that we typically do, or we always do with all of our guests, is we ask our guests to talk about what it is that you're curious about. And so you can talk about anything. You can talk about, it could be deep. It can be something that's just in your mind, but we'd love for the parents to answer that question. What are you curious about?
Okay.
Who wants to go first?
Any takers to go first?
How about you go first, Mom?
Okay. I'm curious, Jordan. How hard did you have to fight to be who you are due to other people's non-acceptance?
Yes.
That's
Well, we're going to
deep.
get into some things. later today.
Yes. I can't wait to hear that
I
conversation.
know.
Who's having that conversation?
No one has that conversation.
No.
Okay. I'll take that. Anyone want to go next about what you're curious about?
I'll go.
Okay.
So, I guess I'm curious to know, how difficult it was for you to navigate your queerness, and growing up, like in the beginning part, like in the early stages of it, before I knew, like what was going on with you, how you were feeling, and how you managed that. That's what I'm curious about. Because I know about the later part, but what about the early part? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We're going to get into some things.
Mom.
I'm curious to know at what point in time in life did you feel that you were different And also, I'm curious to know how you feel about us accepting you as you are.
Cool. All right.
Nice.
Word.
Love that. And I want to keep that question in mind, Mom. But that was the end of the game. What we're going to do now is we're going to get into some one-on-one conversations. And we actually went into the order that we're going to do this today. So, Mom, you and I are going to talk first. Tony Major and Tony Minor, you're gonna follow us. And then Miss Annette and Damon, you're going to close out the episode with your one-on-one conversation. So, see you all in a little bit.
Cool.
Right here.
All right, Mom. Happy to have you in the studio today.
Glad I'm here.
I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm happy that it's working. So I just want to talk to you just about like your experiences with queer culture and things like that. So I think it's helpful to kind of talk to you about sort of your younger years growing up. And I'm curious to know, like, what were your experiences with the queer community or queer people when you were growing up? Like, did you see that often? Like, what was your exposure to that?
Well, we didn't see it at all. We didn't even see it on TV.
Yeah.
The most we've seen is probably comedians pretending like they're women.
Yeah.
But other than that, it just wasn't part of our growing up.
Did people, like, outside of TV, like, did people talk about it? Like, did you hear it hear people talking about it in school, or like just like at the cookout? Like,
Not at all.
no?
Not at all.
Okay. So you didn't really have a understanding of what it meant when you were growing up?
Never gave it a second thought.
Okay. Around like when do you think that you started, I guess, like seeing it more or hearing about it more?
Probably in my 20s, late 20s.
Where were you then? Like what do you think changed in your life that you were able to experience that more?
I think it was the openness of the queer people more so.
Okay. So people were more like expressive with their identity, and people were
Right.
like, you were starting to see like a bit of like pride, I
Right.
guess, with people. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So, as it pertains to me, I would ask you how you reacted to me coming out, but I had a unique experience. So I'll rephrase it and say, when you found out that I was gay, what was that experience like? Like, what was going through your mind? You called me and we talked about it. Like, what was your thought process before you called me? Like, just tell me what that experience was like.
Well, it was always in the back of my mind. So it wasn't a shock to me. It just wasn't 100% definite
Yeah.
that you were.
Got you. So when, because I remember specifically the day that you called me, I was coming out of a sociology class. It was my junior year of Howard, and you called me and you were just asking me questions about like my schedule. You were like, what class are you coming from? You're coming out of the sociology class? And I was like, how do you know my schedule? And then we had like a little bit of small talk. And then you said, I just want you to know that I know and that I love you.
Yes.
And like, I will never forget those words because it was like a weight that was lifted off of my shoulders, because I knew that I wanted to come out to you. I just could not figure out the time to do it.
Yes.
Like, did you do any preparation for that phone call or anything like that? Or did you just like, you found out the news and then you were like, let me call him?
Yeah, not at all. I didn't have to prepare for that.
Okay. Just let the spirit guide you. Okay. So thinking about like after, you became aware of my sexuality, did you have any challenges with accepting it? Like, were people in your community sort of, I guess, critical on your acceptance of me? Or did you hear people kind of have negative things to say about you supporting me? Like, did you have any of that happened?
Not at all. there's not one person that approached me on a subject.
It's one of those things that I feel like is pretty secretive. Like even after you come out, I feel like people don't want to necessarily make a public conversation out of it. It's something
Right.
that's kind of like swept under the rug. So I can believe that people may not have said anything to your face, but based on my experience, I'm pretty sure they were saying it behind your back.
Probably so.
So it's safe to say that you never felt like judged or criticized.
Oh, not at all.
Okay. And, you know, when we were playing the game earlier, you mentioned that you were curious about like how hard I had to fight to like be who I was. So for me, just to answer that quickly, for me, I always kind of knew that I was different, like from a very, very, very young age. I'm talking like 5.
5?
Yeah, like very young. Remember when I used to stay at it was like a daycare around the corner from where we lived. And I stayed at this woman's house.
The babysitter, yes.
Yeah, I just remember even back then knowing that I was like interested in the other guys instead of the
But
other girls.
you were a baby
Yeah,
with the babysitter. 'Cause
I was
by
a baby?
Yes.
Like I wasn't like 4, 5?
No, you were already in preschool by then.
Oh.
She took care of you. You were still in diapers.
Oh, well, maybe I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Why do I feel like I knew it at that point? I don't know. There's like a memory. Maybe I fabricated that. Wow. But in terms of like fighting to be who I was, it was difficult. You know, I felt different. People made it clear that I was different. Being called names and like bullied in school and stuff like that. And
See,
then,
that I didn't know.
yeah.
You're
Like it was
talking junior high school?
definitely junior high. That's probably when it was the most bad. Because I think in high school I was pretty
How
fine.
did they know?
I mean, mannerisms. You know, I wasn't a super like traditionally masculine kid. I didn't play sports.
No boys really are around that age.
Yeah, but you know, I had like a little limp wrist, maybe like
You
a
did?
little. All right, Mom. Yes. I mean, people could tell. People could look at me and be like, "He's gay," and I didn't always bring it up because I didn't want to acknowledge it, and I wasn't ready to accept it. Or for it to be my reality, because I think growing up, I seen all these horror stories about people coming out to their parents and then being excommunicated from the family. So for me, my strategy was keep a low profile, like try not to bring too much attention to who I like and who I don't like and what my preferences are, and move to a major city. So that was why I really wanted to go to Howard, because I wanted to move to an environment where I felt like there was more inclusion and that there was a community that I could feel safe in. And so even after graduating college, we talked about this. You were like, "Oh, why don't you like, you know, move back home for a little bit and save and like then figure out what you want to do after graduating college?" And my answer to you was, I'm not coming back home. I'm moving to New York or LA.
Okay, now what was it about Howard that you already knew before you got there?
About it being like inclusive.
Yes.
I think part of me, I didn't even really know that it was going to be this super inclusive place. For me, it was more so about like watching TV and watching just like things in pop culture and people talking about Howard as this place where you go and there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of successful people graduate from there and they go off to have these lives that are just kind of like in these very big cities. That's all I thought of. Like I was thinking about like, how do I go to a school that's going to get me into a place where I can move to New York or LA and I can live my adult life in those places? Because for me, that was sort of like the goal.
I thought I steered you toward Howard.
I wouldn't say
I
that.
didn't?
No, because y'all didn't even want me to go to Howard. Y'all wanted me to
Yes,
go to
I did.
Y'all wanted me to go to Hampton.
No, I wanted you to go to Howard, but I also wanted you to put in applications at other schools just in
Yeah.
case. I wanted you to go to Howard, I thought, before you did.
I mean, I wanted to go to Howard because every rapper was talking about it, and it seemed like every black person that I knew that was on TV was wearing a Howard sweatshirt
Yeah.
or doing something in that space, and I was like, oh, this seems like it could be cool. But yeah, I mean, that was my goal. My goal was to like, my way of fighting was to like pour into like my future, so that I can be in a place like New York where I'm not like this unique person that doesn't have community or doesn't have anybody who understands what I'm going through. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure y'all was just like, oh, you don't need to go to Howard, go to Hampton. It's
Not me. That wasn't me.
So, you know, you've had confirmation about my sexuality for how long has it been now? Definitely over 10 years, maybe even like 15 years now.
How long have you been out of school? Probably
12
add
years.
2 years to that.
Okay, so 14 years, almost 15 years. Since I've come out, there's been a lot more representation in the media. I know that you and the family were at one point very big Empire fans, that show on Fox.
Yes.
And I know that Jussie Smollett's like his storyline was a very popular storyline about him coming to terms with his sexuality and his parents coming to terms with it. But outside of TV, were you doing anything to sort of educate yourself on like queer culture and stuff like that, so maybe that you can like connect better with me? Like, did you like read anything or like watch documentaries, or, you know, did you do any sort of work to, I guess, have a better understanding of my lifestyle and who I am?
Well, I pretty much already understood your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I needed to read anything or watch anything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you watch the podcast?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You sure about that?
Not all of it. It's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of content. You know, we put out a lot of episodes.
I know you did.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm happy that we're having this conversation because, you know, I'm in my 30s now, and you know, I'm looking for a lifetime partner. And so very happy that we can have this relationship and that you can be a part of it and that we can grow together. A baby. Okay. How many?
Start off with one.
Well, obviously. But how many in total?
No more than 3.
No more than 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a lot of kids in New York City. You moving to New York to help take care of these kids?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, let's bring that number down to maybe like 1.
Your grandmother had 6 children.
I know. I don't think look, she did a lot, okay? I don't know if I can carry that flagpole. It's a lot of responsibility. You had 1.
Yeah.
I want to follow in your footsteps.
Okay.
Does that sound better?
Yeah.
All right. Well, the way I want to end this is, you know, there's a lot of people who are watching this who maybe have like a strained relationship with their parents, or maybe are preparing to have to start a family. If you have any advice that you would give to parents who are trying to come to terms with their child's queer identity, what advice would that be?
Don't beat yourself up. You know, you were born like that. That's your truth. And we just want you to be happy in life, like anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, you can't force it, right? You gotta just like
Right.
go with the flow. And think that's good advice, because you have to just be open to it and understanding that, like, this is who your child is.
Right. And it has nothing to do with you or how you raised your child.
That's key. I hear a lot of parents
If
trying
I
to figure
shouldn't,
out.
if I wouldn't have done this, if I wouldn't have done this, or if I did more of that.
Wise words. Well, thank you, Mom. I'm
You're
happy that we can
welcome.
have this conversation.
Yes.
All right, we're going to clear out, because now we're going to allow Tony Minor and Tony Major
Yes.
to talk. So
Interesting.
we'll talk. We'll talk a little bit later after the show's over.
Okay.
All right.
So, Dad, Tony Major
Tony Major.
and Tony Minor. I love that the story behind that is Aunt Kay, who's your aunt, my great aunt. She dubbed us that, as opposed to, they call me Little Tony, and she was like, no, Tony Minor.
Yeah. Right.
And so, and that kind of stuck, and I love it, and people live for it too. And so I'm glad that the world will get to see Tony Major and Tony Minor, because Damon and Jordan get to see it. Other friends of mine get to see it. They see our dynamic, and they, my energy is just the same as your energy. We have that in common, and you gave that to me. So with this conversation, though, it's really important for us to have the Black male perspective. I think, we're getting Jordan's mom, we're getting Damon's mother as well, and to have you here is an honor. I'm glad and privileged and grateful to be able to have my father in my life, and to be able to be in a place where we can even have this conversation, because we went through the ringer, but we made it. So first, I just want to make sure your mic is close enough, because the people need to hear you.
And I want to be heard.
And you want to be heard. So let's go back to your youth and growing up, and talk about queer culture and what that looked like when you were coming up. I know, Black folks, that's being queer and gay and whatever else is taboo, and people don't really talk about it a lot. But I'm curious to know, what was your experience with that as you were coming up?
So, my experience, like, product of the 70s, born in the 60s or 70s and 80s, there wasn't, the queer culture was kind of like stigmatized, to be honest with you, Tony, right? So there was, growing up as a Black male, and you're playing, and if there was another male and he acted sort of like, feminine or in a girly manner, he got labeled. And I don't know if I can say this, but I will.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay, great. So if you were acting like a girl, they were calling you like a homo, quote unquote, or a fag, quote unquote. So all kind of derogatory things. And so that was sort of like the culture for me that I can remember. Wasn't my personal thoughts per se. I when I think about it, I was trying to think, like, so how was I feeling back then?
Yeah.
And I don't know if I even took a stand one way or the other, to be honest with you. But I know that my memories of the queer culture growing up was sort of like the queer culture was like stigmatized. And if you were a Black male and you were acting more feminine, then you weren't hanging out with the cool kids or the jocks. There was no real place for you to hang out with, per se, that I can remember. And I don't, like I said, I don't really recall what was going on with a queer person at that time, because I didn't really have anybody that I knew at that time that was queer. Like, I didn't know of one single person at that time that I was queer. We knew people, like, again, for instance, that we knew some guys that hung with the girls, per se, but they hadn't made it known, so we really didn't know.
Right, it was speculation.
Yeah, a lot of speculation.
And it's interesting to hear that you didn't necessarily have that bandwagon mentality, or that group think of, bullying, or othering folks that were seemingly queer, and you didn't let that affect your understanding of the experience. You kind of just were living your life and you noticed things were going on, but it didn't shape how you responded to seemingly queer people.
No. The other aspect of that is too that in the family in which you were born into, we had a cousin. Kevin. We had a cousin named Kevin, and Kevin was definitely queer, and I loved Kevin to death. And my fondest memory was a trip to Virginia, family reunion, family and friends when it first originated, and I ended up staying with Kevin in his house. He had his own place. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But he was like the coolest person. And so that kind of like that bond, that feeling kind of like was my initial like introduction. Like we just talked all night. We sat up and talked all night and drank and had like a wonderful experience.
Yeah, it's, the queer folks in the family are often the most fun. I mean, Aunt Sharon, I think about a few folks, and it just kind of rings true. Like even when Beyonce talks about her Uncle Johnny and her being a kid and having that experience. Now let's talk about when I came out to you. I don't know if you remember when I came out verbally to you. I don't know your thoughts about what you thought about me before I came out. Because, I don't feel like I ever really was hiding myself from the family. I kind of carried myself as usual. I probably was toned it down a bit, but like I never really was, putting on or trying to mask it up and be more butch or more tough. But I want to know, what was your reaction when I came out? So the story goes, we were in the car having a night on the town in Harlem, and we were driving and we were getting our lives, and you put on some music, as we always do, blasting it. And I told you at that moment I was dating not the person I'm with now. It's someone that I was previously with that the family met. And I was like, I want you to meet my boyfriend. And you looked at me and you was like, you're what? And I was like, my boyfriend. And you were like, okay. And it was literally that sort of seamless and fluid, and we just kept going on about our nights, and then you eventually met him. And so what was your thoughts about me coming out, or us verbalizing it and talking about it and then going from there?
It's funny, because, I don't know if it's my age or whatever, because that particular scenario is not in my mind. Like I didn't remember that the way you remembered it, but I'm glad you refreshed my memory. My actual thoughts about, because I would always ask Crystal about you. I was like, is Tony gay? She was like, have a conversation with your son, right? So I remember, you remember that party you had at that hotel downtown?
Oh, that was the X before the X I'm talking about. Yes.
Right. That's when in my mind I was like, oh, wow, okay, so.
At the Conrad.
Right. So that's when I kind of like, when I got back in the car, because I remember Crystal did the baking, and that's kind of like, I was like, well, the question is answered in my mind. Right? So I don't have to, I know. But the thing about it, I can always remember, so that conversation that you said,
that's the first time I verbalized it,
right?
But
and
I also wasn't hiding before,
right? Because it would seem to me that the way you recall it is probably the way it would go with us. Because as my child, like I was accepting of anything you did and supportive of everything you did. And the reason behind that, in my mind, was like you were the best child that anyone could ever ask for. No problems from start to finish. Now, I don't know, I guess that's who you are, But as far as when you, like, when I officially knew that you were queer, I did have some thoughts in the beginning, because I was wondering, like different things as like as a black male, what were you going through and what were you dealing with, and how could I support? But that experience about the car ride, it's so funny because I have no real recollection of that. My thoughts were that party that night was when I knew for sure. Yeah. But there were always signs along the way, like no girlfriend, and but like you said, you never masked anything, and my thoughts were, that's my son.
Yeah, I know, and I also recognize that I'm privileged in that sense because a lot of Black gay men aren't afforded that privilege. They don't get to have family that is accepting a father, that's accepting a mother, that's accepting, And so I do recognize that. And one of the things you asked earlier about, like, you started to learn more about my older years, and you were thinking about when I was younger and what was that like. It was interesting because I still was discovering who I was, and I felt like I had thoughts when I was younger, but I didn't really know where to place those thoughts until maybe right before I went to college. And then I wanted to go away to Howard because I felt like I could then explore me, and it did give me that like Pandora's box open, and I was able to explore my sexuality. And so, I didn't feel necessarily like it was just this hard thing to manage. I just didn't know what I was managing and where to place it until later on in life. And then once I got to a place, I was like, and I say this all the time, and I get this from one of my friends, if you ain't fucking me, you ain't feeding me, you ain't financing me, then
fuck you.
Fuck you.
That's you. That's what you say, right? I love that too. I love that about you.
And the other thing, and I do want to say just briefly, is that the other hard thing to, I don't know if it's come out or talk to you about, was when I told you and Crystal that I was HIV positive.
Oh yeah, that was such a moment.
And that was a moment, and I was crying the next day. That was probably tougher for me than you knowing that I was gay.
Right. So when you did that night, like, it's for a minute like the earth stopped, because I
you were
was
ready
like,
to fight.
Yeah, I was ready to fight. Because my mind is crazy. And I'm thinking somebody that knew that they were infected, intentionally infected you. So I was like, that dirty such and such. But then when you explained it, I calmed down. Right. More importantly, so once I got past that, well, that was my initial thoughts. Then it was like, well, damn, you went through this on your own. Like, then it's, I'm starting to think, like, to go, that made you even more special in my mind. Like, to be able to navigate that whole scenario, that whole medical issue on your own, like, who was supporting you. And then it also came up, I'm like, well, why wouldn't he tell us? Why didn't he feel he could tell us? Mm-hmm. Did he not want us to worry? Or, like, what was going on? And I was trying to, in my mind, feel what you were feeling at that time and what you must have been going through. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that was such a moment. It made us such, like, the three of us, so, like, very bonded.
It was right.
Yeah,
immediately, and it felt like a weight off my shoulders. It was before I discussed it on the podcast here, and I'm grateful for that we were able to have that moment and move forward from that.
Right. I'm happy that you told us. Like, I feel privileged when you share your inner secrets. No matter what they are, to be honest with you, because
you don't have to.
Right. Like, you are you, and I'm here to support.
Yes.
I love you, and I'm here to support.
Yeah. So speaking of your support, quickly, I want to know about, did you face, you said the family was asking questions, you were asking questions. Did you have any sort of, I guess, backlash or, people coming at you for supporting my sexuality? I don't think so, but just wanted to ask in case.
That's not happening. That wouldn't, that would have never, first of all, you know me. Mm-hmm. You're my son. Like, are you telling me anything about my son? That's not happening in life. Like, I told you before, I'll die for you. I told you that. The other part is, if anybody was going to judge and criticize, they weren't going to be a part of my life. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not, like it's always family over.
Well, listen. I said earlier, I don't fight, but just know I roll with some goons.
Yeah, you did say that, right? You
And
know,
you are one of those.
so yeah, I never really had no situations where anybody was going to say anything about you. Now, the thing that when I thought about this, when I think about the question, it's sort of like, so typically Black African American men who are homophobic will have things to say about the queer community, as they may just walk down the street, so you see those two, blah, 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 so on and so forth, right? Since my son is queer, my response is always, look, they got a right. They have choices. How are they affecting you? Your personal, beliefs are your personal beliefs. They have their own. Let them be. But I don't. Right.
Yes.
But I don't get deep in it because it's like,
You don't. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but at least
They're
they know
ignorant.
where. Like I make that stand and I make it known, and then I might get some sidetrack, and then I'll have to, or some, it turns into like a joking format. Then I just slide off. I said what I needed to say, and so you know where I stand. But no one has ever approached me with any type of criticism or judgment.
Yes. Okay. I love to hear that you are in a place where you're educating or giving perspective. And speaking of education, have you ever felt that you needed to educate yourself more on queer culture or what this means? Your son's queer. Maybe I should learn a little bit about X, Y, and Z, or maybe I'm watching something on TV and I'm getting some perspective.
Right.
Anything there?
Yeah. So, as far as education is concerned, like what that show, Pose? Yeah. That was it for me in a very big way. I love that show. I love the storyline, the inner storylines. The other education piece for me is like, so as my child, I didn't think I needed to sort of educate myself on your lifestyle. I thought that based on conversations and observations and interaction, like I've interacted with your friends. I remember when I first met Jordan and he came to the house with his white shirt on.
You thought he was so cool.
Yeah, he comes in walking. I was like, oh, wow. But the thing that I really, I enjoyed. So my education actually comes when I see you guys interact and I just become a part of. I know that there may be some things that I might not be aware of per se, but that's where you be the experts and your peers are the experts. And if I need to know something, I'm not afraid to ask you, like have a conversation about it. But as far and then again, like I said, watching the podcast and watching the shows on television. No, well, not that particular show.
Pose.
Pose was a big education for me too.
Yeah. And speaking of education, I know that you're a drug counselor and you constantly are teaching and educating and also learning. Is there any advice that you would give to other parents out there who might be struggling with, or not even just parents, any person out there who might be struggling with accepting the queerness of a loved one, someone who's queer, that they don't know how to deal with that?
Sure. So when thinking about this question, I as a parent was, I produced you. I don't get to pick you. I produced you. So, along with your mother. So we didn't have, we can't, we want this.
This was a production.
Right, this was a production. We don't get to pick our children. We produce our children. And then we need to support their dreams, whatever that might be. I'm thinking as one, you're black, you're a male, and you're queer. 3 targets immediately off the gate, right? With that being said, the support and love that a parent can provide is definitely necessary and needed. So the other thing that one of the parents mentioned earlier about, a parent thinking that it's something that they did wrong or what could I have done to prevent this. There's nothing that you can do to prevent it. And so then that goes to speak on your beliefs and culture, because if you're a product of like the 60s or the 50s, you were raised a certain way, and your beliefs and your value systems are based on what was passed on to you.
Yeah.
And so then you have the opportunity to break that. So you show your love and you show your support, and you listen, and you become curious, and you make
Word. Stay curious.
Stay curious. You ask questions, and that's what I would say. It's like embrace it.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us. We've come such a long way. People have no idea. We still have our moments, but they're moments of growth and opportunity to continue learning and loving on each other. So I hope that this can be an example for anyone who decides to watch this, that, you may or may not have someone in your life who accepts you, but just know that there is acceptance out there, and it starts within, and you can find that for yourself. And so I'm glad that we are able to just be a possibility model for people in the world. So I thank you for having this conversation, Tony Major. And we're going to pass it to Damon and Miss Annette to close it out. And then we'll stay curious and see what
Definitely.
happens.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Mom, we're gonna be the last ones to go, close out the episode. Okay. And this is all really special to us. We wanted to kind of talk with our parents and get more perspective, I think, like deep questions that we don't typically ask you all every day. So we're gonna start with your past before I was born and I was around. What were like your earliest experiences with queerness? What did you see growing up? Did you see anything in media, people you knew?
Growing up, I was never exposed to the queer community. I never had any experience with it at all. I think that a lot of it was hidden. It was not something that was discussed or discussed in the household. So I was never had any exposure to it at all.
Got it. So that's interesting. Everybody's hiding underground. And I guess shifting to me, like what was your reaction when I first so like I remember actually the night before I moved to New York City, we were having you were asking me about like having kids and getting married or something, and I freaked out because I was just like, and I called Dad and I was just like, Mom's asking me all these questions. I don't want to talk about this, and I'm moving to New York tomorrow, and I'm gay, and everybody should know. And like I talked about it at the time, and I actually told him, and he, I guess, shared it with you.
He shared it with me.
So what was your reaction? I never.
As you became a teenager, we saw different signs, we saw different things, and we would discuss it among us.
What did y'all say?
Well, we saw, you really wasn't really into sports. You did track. And then me, I would always ask you about, is there a girl you like? You have a girlfriend? And you did. You had a girlfriend. So it's like, okay, well, no. But then there were other signs of, and I don't know if you were in college or if you were a teenager, when you brought home these blue jeans. And these were blue jeans that were skin tight, and you had to lay in the bathtub in water.
Oh, I remember.
In order for those jeans to stretch. And I'm looking, and they're real tight, and I'm thinking.
It was the blue jeans that gave it away?
Yes, you gave it. the blue jeans. And then some of your mannerisms. Sometimes you would put your hand on your hip. So, but yes. And then your father told me, because you did not share that with me. And he shared it with me.
And I mean, I remember we didn't really talk about it for like 2 years. And what was going through your mind in that time?
In that time is because you had a girlfriend. And then you had a different girlfriend. At least you told me it was a girl that you were dating. So I did not. I think maybe you were over that phase. Is what my
but then like after
was.
I came out, like when I was moving to New York, I told Dad, he told you, and we didn't talk about it again until you all were coming to New York. I remember for Christmas, and I was dating a guy at the time, and we had a whole back and forth about you wanting to meet him, not wanting to meet him.
Right.
Where was your mind in that time?
Because at the time, I thought you were still into girls.
You thought it was just a phase.
It was a phase. And then when we were coming to New York, and you indicated that you wanted us to meet your friend, my initial thought, and I said no.
I remember.
And
I said to Dad that if she's going to come to Christmas at my house, this is how it's going to be, or you can stay at home. And I remember Dad was like, I will deal with all of this.
Right, because he never shared that with me. And he told me, he said, look, we're going to New York. It's going to be fine. And at that point in time, I started questioning, well, who is this person? What does that person look like? And you gave this description until the both of us, we were like, oh my gosh. we were really, we didn't know what to think or expect. But at the end of the day, what I did, I had to do some soul searching.
Yeah, how did you navigate that?
Because you're my child. We have a great bond, a good relationship. And I love you, and I love you unconditionally. So that for me, it did not matter because it was about you and me making sure that I was there for you emotionally. I was your support, and I wanted you to feel free to come to me if you had any questions, if it was something that you were thinking about, or if it was anything that you were stressed about. I know you would go to Dad, and he in turn would be like the liaison, the middle person that would come to me. And so together we worked through it.
Yeah. It's funny. I was listening to Tony's dad, and he was just like, you're born with three things: you're black and you're male.
Right.
And my dad
That's
like,
what Dad
it's like
would say.
Every black man of a certain age, I think, has a handbook, and they all get these notes apparently. But I remember then that the person I was dating at the time ended up coming to Chicago to meet extended family and people for Christmas. And I remember Dad was just like, no one will say anything negative. And if they have an issue, they can talk to me about it. Did anyone ever say anything to you or give you negative feedback? Or
no.
Like, I know we grew up in church. Like, is anybody ever side-eyeing?
No. No one has ever said anything to me at all. At all. And it wasn't a secret. Because your father would let them know, yes, I have a gay son. And if they made comments about anyone else, he would stop them in their tracks. And then also with our pastor, he did not tolerate anyone speaking ill of anybody. So.
Well, that's interesting because a lot of times people associate church with intolerable or like just like judgmental people. How is it like we grew up in church, you all were heavily involved in the church I know that you go to now. What has that, I guess, relationship been with that specific church that has been about acceptance, it seems, because I've been there with you all before too?
With my church family, I feel as though they're a family. They're not judgmental. They're there to help. In your time of need, they help you. And they look at you as a human being, as family. They don't look at you're queer or you have a queer child or anything. And that's what I like. And then they focus more on an incredible life, wanting people to live an incredible life, wanting people to love one another, wanting people to build wealth. To be successful. And that's what they focus on. Okay. And they're more about family.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, everyone has someone in their family that's queer. So,
you may not know it, but...
you may not know it. And you don't know this, but my best friend is queer.
Oh, yeah. You told me about it. Yeah.
Yes. So.
You going to go to their house for dinner, right?
Yes.
You're going out on the town. And then what, like, I know we've seen certain things. It's interesting. I remember when Dad was really sick and we were all at home together. We all watched Pose together.
Yes.
So that was I remember explaining, like, trans people to you, and we were having all these things, but are there things you've seen as media has become more progressive, or things you've read, or just people you've met, you've talked about your friend, like people you've met in your life that have kind of changed or just given you more insight into the culture?
You know, I've worked with people, executives that were part of the queer community, teammates part of the queer community. And I really just view them as they're no different than me. You know, they may do certain things or live a certain lifestyle, but they're human. You know, they have a heart, they have feeling. I don't look at them any differently. I don't see anything different about them. I just see them for who they are.
Yeah. And I think like it's interesting, like all these conversations around like people and trans rights and queer rights. And I think people really just want to be the same rights. I don't want special treatment, or any of us. I don't think we want special treatment. We just want the validity of who we are to be viewed, to be seen, not to be othered. And even just the concept of like knowing I'm different. I'm not different. I'm just me.
Right.
And I think that's the place that people want to get to.
Yes.
So no, and I think so. Finally, we've been trying to incorporate little like homework bits into our show this season. So for this episode, all the parents are doing that. And you as a parent of, well, 2 queer sons.
Yes, right.
2 queer sons.
2 queer sons.
And like, what advice do you have for other parents trying to understand things, trying to figure out what they can do to help and continue to love, or if they're not as accepting, like they initially are like, wait, I don't know what's going on, and they ignore it or don't talk about it. Like, what advice do you have looking on your journey? What have you learned that you maybe would do differently? Or,
you know, with me, the way I look at it is that's my child. That may be another person's child. You are there to love them, to support them. They may be facing emotional challenges or wondering how will they be able to navigate through society. You are their support. If they fall down, you are there to hold them up. You should love them. It does not matter. And what you have to think about, you can either continue to love your child or you can end up losing your child. And which one is more important to you? For me, we have a great bond. I did not want to lose that. You are a great, loving individual, and I will give my all to be there for you. And I think other parents need to do that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, it's all a journey. Like
it's a journey.
The partner, my ex-boyfriend, you were like, I don't want to talk to him. And now, like, I'm getting married. You're in my wedding. And like, you're staying here with me and my partner. And everything's about growth. Like, I remember even when my little brother was just like, oh, what should I tell mom? And I'm just like, it's nobody cares.
and then they go through emotional trauma. And with him, before he came out, it's the emotion. Yeah. And at one point in time, I said, just tell me what it is that you want me to know. And he held it in, and it was destroying him. And he, in turn, was destroying, other relationships. So it's like, come to terms with who you are. We accept you for who you are. It does not change anything. So once you feel that love, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Yeah.
And once you love yourself, this is who I am. And then, like you said, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. You can either accept it.
You would not be a part of it.
Or you would not be a part of it.
Yeah, Jordan said something in an episode we did last season, I don't know, but instead of coming out, he said that it's about inviting people in.
Yes.
Because coming out is not for you. It's really just about me being comfortable inviting you into this space in my life. And I think that's the thing that parents, people around us, whomever, it's about like maybe not centering you and how I feel about it and why couldn't you tell me, and it's more about how can I create an environment where they think that bringing them into this part of their lives will still be caring, will still be nurturing. But no, thank you, Mom.
And I agree. And I just want to say this with my friend. We've been friends for about 20-something years.
Mm-hmm.
And when she told me, she said, I understand if you don't love me anymore or you don't want to be my friend. And I said, what would make you say that? She said, because of people and how people think. And my words to her were, I'm going to be there for you forever. And are you happy? And she said, this is the happiest I have been in my life. And I said, I'm happy for you. And nothing changed. She's still the same person. You're still the same person. Nothing has changed at all. And I would not want you to change. I want you to be free to be yourself.
Thank you. All right. Love you, Mom.
And I met a lot of amazing people through you. And I love you. And this is why it's so important to every day, in which I try to make an effort to do it every day or all the time, is to always tell my children, I love you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to close out this very special episode of Surface Level with kind of some takeaways, things that we felt. Like, I'll start.
I felt like crying.
I felt like our parents are now, like, the new host of Surface Level 2.0. Like,
I mean,
can we be like the Real Housewives and have like different franchises? Like Surface Level Parents, Surface Level Kids.
Oh, my God.
Like,
Don't talk about my mama.
Child.
But yeah, my mama Miss Annette, Tony Major, Miss Teresa, cutting up.
This was
Jordan. What takeaways do you have?
I mean, first of all, I'm so happy that we got an opportunity to do this episode. This is something that we've been trying to do or talking about doing for some seasons now. So I didn't know what to expect coming in here, but I walked away with so much more. I think one of the things that stuck out to me is that all three of our parents talked about how they basically had no exposure to the queer community when they were growing up. And I think what immediately went through my mind was, wow, like how much more difficult does it have to be? At least for me growing up, even if I didn't feel accepted, I felt like I could find, a few representations of our community in the media. I don't know how lonely that could have been to feel like you didn't see it around you because everyone's hiding in plain sight. It's not on TV. It's not in the media. It's like, who do you talk to about this? And how do you even know this is your identity?
Right.
Like, who are you fact checking this with? Who are you like talking to about this?
Yeah.
And so I thought that was a really interesting takeaway. And so now that sort of made me a bit more curious to talk to people in our community again that were, around our parents' age and just talking to them about their experience growing up. That was a huge takeaway. And then also, just kind of like me thinking that my queerness was so obvious growing up and just being like, well, who doesn't know?
It was.
Right.
I thought it was. I thought it was very obvious. But like to I guess to like hear that that there was speculation, but there wasn't this like overt like, oh yeah, like my son is this. That was kind of eye opening.
I mean, it feels like similar to their time growing up, where it was you knew something was going on, but you didn't have confirmation, so you just kind of like skirted the issue. Yeah, you kind of, you may have had a thought, but you didn't really know where to place it, so you just kind of went business as usual. And so I think that that's a big part of why they may have felt like they weren't exposed to it, because I feel like they probably were exposed to it and they just didn't know that it was all around them, because people were hiding themselves or people weren't hiding themselves, but they weren't necessarily challenging it. And also, I think Damon's mother said, like, everyone has someone queer in their family, and it's true. And when people, and that's my thing, when someone has gotten testy and been like, oh, your son is X, Y, and Z, or blah, 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 blah. I was like, well, girl, your son is too. Like, girl,
He in it too.
So what are we talking about here? Because now after I've come undone after this episode, which I will say I'm gonna go on the record and call it award-winning, iconic, first of its kind.
No one does that.
No one does that.
You
does
did that.
But we did it. And it feels so good, and it goes back to one of the things that is very intrinsic and true to who I am as a person, where I've always felt when you have the tough conversations, you feel so much better afterwards. So when the tough get going, the going get tough. And I just feel like, I don't know about you, the both of you, but even after that, I feel like now the rest of my day, bitch, it's about to be a serve. It's over for you bitches. So yeah, and that was a serve.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah,
it was.
That was a true. We can classify that as a serve on today.
Yeah. A couple seasons ago, we made the decision to kind of refocus the show, like less purely on us and our friendship and more on how we can talk about our community, how we can be of service to our community. And today, this for me was like the best blend of those two things. Yeah. It's incredibly personal, but it's something where someone can find this on the internet years from now and hopefully find some level of value in it because it was educational. Like we talk about possibility models. And how often do you see parents of Black queer people talking about their journey, the acceptance, the lack of understanding, maybe, and the standing in, like, I think the thread as all three of them, it was just like, at the end of the day, you have to choose to love this person that you're guiding through life. Yeah. Because you didn't choose them, you're here with them, and you can decide to be here or not. And the feeling that I want more parents to just get from this is like the feeling of not shouldn't be an option. Like I want to, in some small way, hopefully this stops or for some household can stop like the narrative of like the kid gets kicked out and they have no relationship with family. Like hopefully this reaches someone to say, hey, there can still be love, even if it's something you don't understand, and that there's a journey that you can go on with them.
Yeah, what's that when they say immortalize? Like that's what this is what this whole podcast journey is doing, and especially conversations like this. It lives forever.
Yeah,
it's our legacy.
and as you can see, coming out made everybody closer with their parent.
Yeah,
and what your mother said about her friend, like. Almost lost it. I was in the green room. and I was
putting my eyes back in my face. I had to put them back on and say, "Hold on now,"
because that's like just hearing the story of her friend saying, I want to share this information with you, but I'm nervous too because you may not want to be my friend anymore. You may not like me anymore. That felt so true to my experience. Yeah. Just thinking that every single person that I decided to talk to, I had to mentally and emotionally prepare for that person to be like walk out of my life. And sometimes I didn't come out to them because the fear was too big.
Yeah.
And so your mother's response to that was what I hope that people could envision to focus on.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you're thinking about, should I come out to this person? Focus on that possibility. Yeah. Focus on the best case scenario.
Yeah. And it's funny. Not funny, but like my father passed a few years ago, and this would have been something he'd love to do. And it was so much of what
I thought about your dad.
Tony's dad was saying that it reminded me of listening to my dad talk.
Your dad. And I said to myself, getting ready for this, I said, I'm glad that Damon, season 1, was it? That you were able to like have the podcast kind of moment with him that you brought to the show. I was just like, this, he's looking down on us giving like, all right.
10s across the board.
Yeah.
He's like Mary J. Blige with that ball.
Well, the opposite. Whatever.
This one's good.
But before Damon closes out, one of the things that your mom said that resonated with me, I've since had this conversation with my own mother, and I hope that other people have this conversation. We need to tell each other more and often that we love each other. So I'm going to say it. I love you, Jordan, and I love you, Damon.
Love you, boo.
Love you too.
Yes.
You too, Jordan.
Love you too.
And that is all the time we have for this very, very special episode of Surface Level. If you enjoyed this episode, let's keep the conversation going. Let us know your thoughts and questions at surfacelevelpodcast.com. And remember, stay curious.